UK press, because the press is, is everywhere, or was it a move because you weren't getting enough support from the firm?
It was both.
Both.
I needed to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something for my own mental health, for my wife's, and for Archie's as well, because I could see where this was headed.
They didn't want him to be a prince or a princess, not knowing what the gender would be, which would be different from protocol, and that he wasn't going to receive security.
I guess that's a where would you start question, but give it a go.
It's hard. I don't think anybody could understand that. But in all fairness, I had no idea, which probably sounds difficult to understand here. But when I first met my now husband, my friends were really happy because I was so happy. But my British friend said to me, "I'm sure he's great, but you shouldn't do it because the British tabloids will destroy your life."
They mocked Meghan Markle live on television, turned her own words against her, and said things most people wouldn't dare say to her face. For years, Meghan remained one of the most talked about women in the world, and some of the sharpest attacks came when the cameras were rolling and millions were watching. Happened when broadcasters and comedians stopped holding back, and which moments went far beyond an ordinary joke. From Piers Morgan's explosive confrontation to Jimmy Carr's brutal one-word takedown. These are the worst live TV roasts Meghan Markle couldn't escape. And the last one came from someone who once defended her, Piers Morgan. Most people in the media know how to keep their real feelings off camera. But when one of them finally lets it show, everything spirals fast. You would remember the moment. Meghan sat down across from Oprah and opened up about everything about life in the royal house. She spoke about the isolation, the way she said the family treated her, the conversation she claimed happened about her own child before he was even born. It was one of the most watched interviews of the decade. Millions tuned in expecting sympathy to follow. Piers Morgan didn't give her any. The next morning, sitting behind the Good Morning Britain desk, Piers Morgan looked straight into the camera and said that he didn't believe a single word she said. Starting from the family tension to the treatment she claimed to receive in the royal house. Piers Morgan made it known that he wasn't buying any of it. And this is where it gets really interesting. You see, when you look at everything critically, you would find out that this wasn't the first time. Morgan and Meghan had history. He had been openly critical of her for years, ever since she cut contact with him not long after she started dating Harry. This felt like the moment all of that finally boiled over on live television. That alone was a big deal. But it got worse from there. His co-host Beresford pushed back on set, trying to defend Meghan point by point. Yet, Morgan wouldn't budge. The exchange got heated fast, and in front of a live studio audience, he stood up and walked off, mid-broadcast. You have to understand the gravity of what he did. While the cameras were still rolling, he left no explanation given until later. This is something you don't see from someone on live television. By the next morning, the fallout was already bigger than the segment itself. Over 40,000 complaints had piled up with Britain's broadcasting regulator, one of the largest complaint counts the industry had ever seen for a single moment on air. It became its own headline, separate from anything Meghan had actually said in her interview. And here's the part most people don't know. Meghan didn't stop at being upset from a distance. Reports later confirmed she went through official channels and filed a complaint directly with the network, not because Morgan disagreed with her, but because of what his words might do to anyone watching who was quietly struggling with their own mental health, given what she'd shared in the interview. Morgan never apologized. Days later, standing in front of a crowd of reporters outside the studio, he said it straight. He would rather lose his job than pretend to believe something he didn't. By the next day, he didn't have a job, and while his exit sent shockwaves through the show, it was nothing compared to what happened next. Colin Jost. Speaking of jokes about the royals that were supposed to disappear by the following week, One Saturday Night Live bit did the opposite. It followed Meghan for months, and depending on who you ask, it's still following her now. Hard to believe a single Weekend Update joke could do that much damage, but that's exactly what happened. At the time, King Charles had crossed the Atlantic for a 4-day state visit, marking 250 years of American independence, sharing toasts with the sitting president, doing all the ceremonial things a royal visit usually involves. It was the kind of trip that generates a few polite headlines and quietly fades. Then Weekend Update got hold of it, and things took a sharper turn. Colin Jost told viewers the king wasn't only there for the anniversary, he was also there, Jost joked, to negotiate the release of a British hostage being held by an American terrorist. A photo of Harry and Meghan flashed up behind him right as the line landed, timed perfectly with the punchline. The studio audience didn't just laugh, they roared, and the clip started spreading within hours. What most people don't know is that this wasn't even Jost's first shot at the couple. Months earlier, during a completely different Weekend Update segment about a new trade deal between the United States and the United Kingdom, Colin Jost joked that the only thing Britain wanted in return for reopening its markets was that America keep these two, Harry and Meghan's photo, flashing up the exact same way it would months later. These were two separate jokes, months apart, same setup, same couple, same photo cue. It wasn't a one-off. It had quietly become a running bit, and nobody at NBC seemed concerned about where it was headed. Here's the part that turned this from a passing joke into a real story. According to people close to the situation, Meghan didn't take the American terrorist line as something she could laugh off. She reportedly took it as a personal humiliation, delivered live to millions of people. One insider described her reaction bluntly, saying she does not laugh when she feels publicly humiliated. What made this detail worse was the pattern behind it. Sources say Meghan handles moments like this in a very specific way, and it isn't confrontation. She doesn't argue back, doesn't release a statement, doesn't go on a podcast to respond. She simply cuts the relationship and walks away, quietly and completely. And NBC was witnessing it because of a 10-second joke delivered to a laughing studio audience on a Saturday night. Make no mistake, because this joke may have cost a major American network its future, with one of the most talked about women alive. And that's not all, because Jost wasn't the only comedian willing to push that hard. Chris Rock, another comedian who didn't just take the easy road with Meghan, was Chris Rock. Most stand-up sets aimed at her stick to safe material, which usually included the wine, the jam business, the never-ending stream of content deals. Rock skipped all of that and walked straight into the one part of her story almost everyone else was too careful to touch. To understand why his set landed the way it did, you have to go back to where the story began, just like it happened with Morgan. Meghan sat across from Oprah and told the world she hadn't fully understood what she was walking into when she married into the royal family. The pressure, the scrutiny, centuries of history she said she wasn't prepared for. It was framed as the moment that explained everything that came after. Chris Rock didn't believe a word of it. Standing on stage, working through a bit about the interview, Chris Rock, speaking about Meghan, said flatly that nobody marries into one of the oldest, most examined families on the planet, and then gets to act shocked when it turns out to be exactly what history already said it would be. He compared it to joining a group whose reputation is public record, then acting stunned when that reputation turns out to be accurate. It got the loudest laugh of the night, but he wasn't finished, and this is the part people still bring up. He pushed further, straight into the most debated moment of the entire Oprah interview, the reported conversations about how dark the couple's baby might be. This was a place where nearly every other comedian who touched Meghan's story tiptoed around that topic entirely. Rock didn't. His argument was simple. People wonder what a baby will look like all the time, in every kind of family, regardless of background. To him, an ordinary curiosity had been stretched into something far bigger than it ever was. This wasn't really a joke about her wine or her lifestyle brand. It was a direct challenge to her own account of events, delivered to a room that agreed with every word. And once a comedian with Chris Rock's reputation said all of that out loud, on stage, it gave the comedians who came after him permission to go even further. That's not all either, because the roasting didn't stay confined to comedy stages for long. The cooking question she couldn't answer. During Meghan Markle's guest appearance on the Australian version of MasterChef, filmed months earlier during her royal tour with Harry, and only airing to the public later on, Judge Jean-Christophe Novelli asked Meghan something that should have taken 5 seconds to answer. What is your favorite dish to cook for your family? It wasn't a trick question. It wasn't designed to catch her off guard. It was the kind of thing any home cook answers without thinking twice. She couldn't name one. What came instead was an explanation about having a lot of palates to appease at home. Harry leaning toward heavier British meals with meat and cream sauces, herself preferring lighter Californian dishes with grilled fish and fresh herbs. Its own, that might have passed as a reasonable answer, but paired with reports that she'd also taken over announcing the contestants' cooking time herself. In the middle of the competition, viewers weren't in a forgiving mood. Clips of the exchange spread within hours. And it did not end there, because broadcaster Dan Wootton later picked the moment apart on air, arguing that her answer proved she was far more comfortable with dips and garnishes than an actual home-cooked meal, calling it abundantly clear from how she'd responded. One question. 5 seconds she couldn't fill. And within days, it was being dissected on international television as proof of something much bigger than a bad moment on a cooking show. Nikki Glazer's theory. Up next is Nikki Glazer, a woman who built her name by roasting some of the biggest stars in comedy, and decided to bring that same instinct to Meghan Markle. Fans had come to expect her to find whatever made a celebrity most uncomfortable, and this time was no different. Instead of joking about the wine business or the endless brand deals most comedians reached for, Glazer built an entire theory about why Meghan married Harry in the first place, and it wasn't flattering. Her argument was simple but sharp. Glazer said Meghan had always wanted to be famous, and marrying into the royal family was the fastest way she found to get there. According to Glazer, once Meghan realized being one of the most photographed women on Earth still didn't feel like what she imagined. She started acting confused and unsatisfied, as if she hadn't understood what fame at that scale would actually cost her. Now here comes the interesting part. Glazer pushed the bit even further by imagining a version of Meghan's life where Harry never existed at all. In that version, Nikki joked that Meghan would still be an actress from Sherman Oaks, maybe competing on a reality dating show instead of marrying into one. It was a blunt way of making her real point, that without the marriage, none of the fame, the Netflix specials, or the global attention would have ever existed in the first place. What made this bit different from most roasts aimed at Meghan is that Glazer wasn't really joking about anything she had done. She was joking about why she did it, which is a much sharper accusation than most comedians were willing to make on stage. But Glazer's angle wasn't the only one built entirely on Meghan's own contradictions. Stay with us. Jimmy Carr's contradictions. Not every word has the power to shake Meghan. It takes someone with the ability to find exactly the right one, just like Jimmy Carr did. And in this case, it all came down to a single word: feminist. Carr pointed out that Meghan had spent years describing herself as a committed feminist, someone focused on independence and career, only to give up that very career the moment she married a prince. He didn't need an elaborate setup or a long story, just the contradiction laid out plainly, in front of a crowd that understood exactly what he meant before he'd even finished the sentence. To many, that was the end. But what most people don't know is that Carr was just getting started. He turned his attention to the royal family as a whole, comparing them to one of the most famous families in American reality television, casting Harry in the role of the relative who occasionally makes headlines for the wrong reasons, a clear nod to his infamous costume controversy from years earlier. It was a comparison built to needle both sides at once, mocking the institution Meghan had married into while reminding the audience that Harry's own past wasn't exactly spotless either. And that's not all. Carr also went after the couple's living arrangements, joking about how their stated desire to split time between two countries lined up conveniently with living off public funds in more than one place, a joke that landed especially hard with British audiences already sensitive about taxpayer money funding royal lifestyles. What made Carr's set stand out is that he wasn't attacking her personality or her television appearances at all. He was attacking the internal logic of her own public statements. So what happened when an entire animated show decided to do the same thing? Let's find out. South Park turns privacy into a punchline. Animated satire doesn't usually hit as hard as a stand-up set delivered straight to camera. But South Park found a way to make its jab land just as sharply, if not harder, by turning Meghan and Harry's own words against them. The episode was built around a version of the couple who insisted over and over that all they wanted in the world was to be left alone. Every scene doubled down on the same message: too much attention, too much scrutiny, a desperate need for a quiet, normal life far away from cameras. It sounds sympathetic on paper. The problem was everything the show chose to put right next to that message. While the characters loudly declared how badly they needed privacy, the show simultaneously highlighted everything working against that claim: an active social media presence, television appearances, and a public profile that kept growing instead of shrinking. The animated versions of the couple traveled from town to town searching for the perfect quiet place to disappear to, all while treating the search itself as something worth filming and sharing with everyone watching. And this is where it hits hard. Don't go anywhere. The episode kept circling back to the same contradiction from different angles, showing the characters chasing attention in one scene and demanding to be left alone in the very next one, almost daring the audience to notice how often those two things happened back to back. What made this piece of satire different from a stand-up joke or a late-night one-liner is that it did not rely on a single punchline at all. It built an entire narrative around the contradiction and let the audience arrive at the conclusion themselves. Jo Koy. Award shows are supposed to be safe ground, a room full of celebrities laughing along at gentle industry jokes before getting back to business. Jo Koy didn't treat the 2024 Golden Globes that way. Hosting live in front of Hollywood's biggest names, Koy worked Harry and Meghan into his opening monologue, joking that the couple were being paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing, then twisting the knife further by suggesting Prince Harry had started calling Imelda Staunton, the actress who played the late Queen in The Crown, just to ask her for money. The room's reaction was instant and split. Some tables erupted into laughter, others visibly stiffened, and the joke started circulating online within minutes, dissected by supporters and critics in equal measure. It didn't help that Koy's set had already been shaky elsewhere that night, drawing criticism for several jokes that missed their mark entirely, which meant the Meghan and Harry line got folded into a wider pylon about the hosting job as a whole. Unlike a late-night monologue that airs and fades, this happened live on one of the biggest stages in entertainment, in front of the exact industry crowd Meghan had spent years trying to stay connected to. And that room laughed anyway, humiliating Meghan Markle in a moment she least expected. Spitting image. In November 2025, every single episode of the revived Spitting Image was suddenly pulled from YouTube. Most viewers assumed it was a takedown over the show's usual targets: politicians, royals, celebrities, the people it had mocked for decades. But the real story traces back to a much smaller detail buried inside one sketch: a foul-mouthed puppet version of Paddington Bear. The show had rebranded its puppet Harry and a Paddington-inspired character named Pads as co-hosts of a video podcast called The Rest is Bullshit. And it was inside one of those episodes that Pads received an unusual Secret Santa gift from Harry's puppet: a jar of what Harry called Meghan's woke marmalade. It was Studio Canal, the company holding the actual rights to Paddington Bear, that changed everything. In October 2025, Studio Canal filed a high court claim against the show's producers, Avalon, accusing them of depicting the beloved children's character as a drug-taking, profanity-spewing podcast host and demanding the puppet itself be destroyed. The legal pressure escalated fast. Within weeks, 5 episodes vanished from YouTube. Then, days later, every remaining episode disappeared too. The entire archive wiped from the platform in what looked like a clean victory for the rights holders. The show's producers refused to go quietly. They released a defiant new episode titled "We're Getting Sued." Opening with a mock funeral, dirge as Pads declared they were bowing their heads in memory of the fallen, while Harry's puppet delivered the news live. More episodes gone, with no guarantee the rest would survive either. What started as a joke about Meghan's marmalade ended up buried under a corporate lawsuit that had nothing to do with her at all, and everything to do with a children's book Bear. To this day, nobody outside the legal filings has said definitively how much of the archive will ever come back. But the mystery around Spitting Image's puppet saga isn't where this list ends. The final name on this list didn't disappear. He turned around completely, and that turn is the real ending. Trevor Noah. If you followed the Meghan Markle story from the very beginning, one voice defended her louder than almost anyone else in comedy, and it belonged to Trevor Noah. Back in January 2020, when Meghan and Harry first announced they were stepping back from royal duties, Noah Trevor used his platform on The Daily Show not to mock her, but to go after the British press instead, walking through headline after headline that treated Meghan differently than other royals and calling the coverage exactly what he believed it was: racist. That wasn't a one-off. Noah kept defending her through the years that followed, criticizing tabloid double standards and even taking aim at King Charles directly after Queen Elizabeth's death. Comments serious enough to spark backlash of his own back in Britain. By 2022, the relationship had grown close enough that Meghan invited Trevor onto her own Spotify podcast, Archetypes, as one of the few men featured across its entire run. A clear sign of how much trust had built between them. Then something shifted. Years later, when Meghan sat down with Noah again, this time on his own show called What Now? It was expected to be a comfortable, familiar conversation between two allies that turned noticeably tense instead. The warmth that had defined their earlier exchanges wasn't there in the same way, and clips from the appearance spread specifically because of how uncomfortable the shift felt to anyone who remembered where the two of them had started. What makes Trevor Noah's story different from everyone else on this list is that his wasn't a single joke, a single column, or a single lawsuit. It was years of loyalty, slowly worn down until even her most vocal defender in comedy sounded like a man who wasn't so sure anymore. Some people roasted Meghan Markle because they never liked her to begin with. Trevor Noah is the only name on this list who started out trying to protect her, and somewhere along the way, stopped. Which of these moments surprised you the most? Is there any fact or incident we've missed out? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it. Until next time, take care.